Hello, I'm with Michael Aron. I'm so happy to be here with Michael. Michael is a mentor to dozens and dozens of young entrepreneurs. He is now giving back because he has an incredible story. He's lived in 6 countries. He's made a successful life in every single one of them. Now, if your parents tell you that you should get a degree in a profession so you could fall back on something, well, Mike is a CPA or CA, a chartered accountant, but we're going to go and translate that for our American friends. And many of our Canadian friends don't know what a CA is anymore. And Mike has been a serial entrepreneur. He's worked with some of the most successful people walking this planet. He is an incredible networker, an incredible giver, a leader. I met you when you were 49 and you were a little anxious, or 50 was a big number for you. That was quite some time. You've now hit another digit. And you are highly competitive and driven, because that's the reason why anybody would live in 6 countries, and every place they went, they would just take state. What was your drive for that?
Love it. So, Peter, just first of all, thank you for the introduction. I hope it's all true and well earned. But and it's a pleasure to be speaking to you, one of the most highly intelligent people I know, who's voracious for information. So I started off being a competitive person, almost a fighter, for lack of a better description, because about 7 weeks before I was born, my mother had a head-on collision with another car. And my mom was put into a coma for several days while I was, about to be born. And the doctors, when I came out, they couldn't believe that I actually came out semi-normal. There's parameters to the normal. And one of the doctors commented, I said that this guy fought to survive and fought to live. And I think that's indicative of my now 60 years. And fighting, unfortunately, has a negative connotation. It just means striving, not fighting, striving. Right. So for me, being competitive, it's funny because I was just looking at my family principles before our conversation. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read my one principle. This is principle number 3. We have 6. The first one is, we run our own marathon. Other people don't define us. Others' benchmarks for excellence and success are not pertinent to ours, yet they might inspire us. We strive for our own self-actualization and full utilization of our skills, blessings, and competences. I think what that says is, or to me, what it meant to me is that we are a family. I am a person that wakes up every day and says, what does the best me look like? And then I choose not to mislead myself as to whether I spent that day being the best me. And being the best me doesn't necessarily mean that I'll win every time at all. It doesn't mean that, to the contrary. It means that I gave it my best every single day. And I think that I would struggle to go to sleep at night if that wasn't the outcome. Now, having said that, I might choose that today's a day that I'm just going to be full relaxation mode. I'll lounge around, I'll read a book, I'll cycle, whatever it may be. But I want to make sure I did that properly. I didn't lounge around looking at my phone every few minutes and wondering what I can do. That I really got in the moment to be competitive about relaxing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a principle that I've woken up from as long as I can remember, that yes, I strive for the best me. What are the negatives that come from that? They're multiple. First of all, is you're always pushing hard. And you very infrequently kind to yourself. Because what happens is your benchmarks for self-excellence keep moving as you get older, as you do more. And it's not often that you look in the mirror in the morning when you brush your teeth or when you go to bed at night and say, I really like that guy looking back at me. I really admire and am proud of that guy. It's very rare that we do that. And that's not right. That's not fine. We should be kind and gentle to ourselves more. I'm trying to learn to do that. The other thing that it does, Pete, is that I've often had the comments that, Mike, you can easily lead special force teams, but you can never lead the infantry. The reason for that is that if you live by standards of self-excellence and competitiveness, you want to hang with people that do the same.
Yes.
So when you're building companies, I remember one of my partners once said to me, Mike, you have a better relationship with the receptionist and one of the offer managers than some of our executive VPs. Why is that? I said, because when our receptionist offer manager walks into the office every day, they want to be the best receptionist and office manager. Some of our executive VPs, they're lazy. They coast a fair part of their life. They don't come close to actualizing their abilities, and therefore I can't work with them. So I always partner with a guy that realizes that a large majority of the world is complacent, and he can lead those people, but I can't. So that's the negative, is you tend to choose carefully the people around you as being people that strive for their own best self.
Right. Have you met, so, and let's go over, starting off. So we know about your mother's accident. We know that you were a fighter at the beginning. Let's talk about your path from that moment to where you are now, because I think your journey is an interesting journey, because most people never leave their home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's believed that most people really achieve success when they leave home. And I have a theory, and I have lots of antidotes, but I call it the 100-mile rule. Do you know what that is?
Always be more than 100 miles away from your parents.
That's it. That's exactly it. The further you are away from your home, the more respect you get. And the reason for that is your mother is always worried if you're eating properly. But someone meets you as someone at 40 who's accomplished, they see that person. They don't have all that preconception. Absolutely. So you find people, when they go outside, they're able to see more because they have the novice effect of not knowing. Plus, they're going to be judged for who they are now, not for who they were.
That's a fantastic thought.
Well, I'll give you the antidote for this.
Yes, please.
So I'm a professional speaker, and I get, they bill me out at $15,000 to $20,000 just to open up my mouth. At home, I get no respect. No one wants to hear me. So that's just the basic one. In Toronto, where I'm from, I was rarely ever asked by my associations that I belong to speak. But I would travel across the country and across North America, and I speak for groups that were much bigger, because Canada's only got 37 million people. And I'd be treated like I was someone. Yeah. But I come back to Toronto, and I was just like everyone else, because I was readily available. So it's almost like, well, you're from South Africa, the De Beers. There's more diamonds than anyone knows what to do with it, but it's that perceived scarcity as well.
So, my wife and I were, during COVID, we were trying to write down how many addresses since we met each other have we lived in, and how many home phone numbers have we had. And it's, 20 plus of each, right? I think that I do want to qualify one thing. You're right, I've lived in 6 countries, but the good news is we still have relationships, in some case business relationships, in all of those countries. Yeah. Because it's not a fresh start because we're running from things. I need to clarify that.
No, I understand. No, I understand that, but each time is a growth.
Yeah, each time we've kept very strong relationships. And my son's wedding almost 2 years ago, there were 84 people from out of town from all these countries. But it's curiosity, Pete. You and I spoke a lot about that. It's all about curiosity. I am curious from the youngest of age. I have a grandson. He's 9 months. They literally have to tighten the straps in the stroller, because when he goes around, he's looking, he's curious. I was curious always. My wife was curious always. And in order to satisfy my curiosity, I had to go taste the world. And not taste it like jump in and stay in a Four Seasons hotel and go to a fine restaurant. be there, go to the marketplace, fill the streets, sit in the coffee shops, and some cases live in those places. And if you're curious, I think it means that you tend to listen more than you speak, because otherwise, how do you satisfy your curiosity if you're doing the talking? And if you listen more than you speak, that's how you build friendships in these different cultures, because they hear that you're truly interested, then they become interested in you. So we go to all these places, and it didn't take long to feel like you were welcomed, because I was curious. I didn't want to waste my time in these places. And then you land up meeting people that you find you have things in common, and you do business together, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes great. But then that kind of makes you feel more at home. So whilst we've done so many changes or lived in all these different places, in many ways, funny, I don't think of them as changes. I see them as just a continuation of the most obvious journey for Karin and I. That's the way I see it. It's just a continuation of our journey. We could not do that to be fulfilled. To be fulfilled, we were curious. We had to go places. And then because we're competitive in those places, we did our best. We got involved in the community, we got involved in business, we got involved in social. It's just the way we could be. I think any other way, I'd be frustrated all the time.
Well, I remember reading once, they went to these people at a senior's home, and they were in their 80s, and they asked them the question. And they asked them what they regretted. And the answer was they regretted what they had not done. Because the fear of the fear prevented them from doing a lot of things. But when they did break through that fear, in most cases, they incorporated that into their story. And it all made sense. And they realized that most of the fears they had were just mental constraints. There's an example of elephants, like at circuses, where when they're a baby elephant, they put a stake in a rope, and the elephant can't move it. And then it grows to be this massive elephant, and half the time they don't even have a stake in, just the rope around the foot, and the elephant never leaves. And it's that fear, it's that memory. And that's why sometimes people have to shake things up, because they're getting complacent. And it's very interesting that you meant about the curiosity, because I become like a wallflower if I'm not interested. But if I have a sense of purpose, like a question, I'm gonna step over dead bodies to get to that person, to ask them that question. And I won't even think about it. And I have no hesitation. And as I get older, we're all on the same journey. And it doesn't matter if the person has $10 billion, if the person has 5 cents. We all go back. Like my favorite psalm is Psalm 49. That basically says it doesn't matter if you're like the rich man or the beggar or the animal, we all go to the same place. So the question is, how did we fill those moments? So the reason I wanted to speak with you, because, well, we met when you moved to San Diego and I was still in Toronto. And when I was thinking about moving to San Diego, I looked towards you as my example, because he was a crazy man who was jumping on a plane every 3 weeks to go back to Toronto, and this was going to be my life. It was a life. And it's really interesting, because before I got stuck, before COVID, I think we sat down, and that week, because I went back and I don't think I saw you until I came back, I also met an old friend of yours just before, Sean McGinnis, who had immigrated from South Africa, just like yourself, to Toronto. And his world
all started together.
Yeah, and his world took him to Dallas, Texas, and how small the world was, right? And I just sat down with him. He read my book, and they just canceled that YPO mega meeting, but he still came in. He wanted to meet me. I felt really great, and I was like, I was living the old life, because I think when we came back, we were talking at your house over dinner about how there was a new life.
Yeah.
And how all our plans that we had before, they weren't going to work for us.
And do you remember the irony of where we had that conversation? It was in our sukkah outside.
Yes.
The portable structure that the Jews use for, which is the transitional structure, right? It's a
Right.
temporary dwelling, right? It was ironic they were talking about the new life in a temporary dwelling.
Yes. I remember what you were saying to me. You were planning to go back to Toronto, and during the lockdown, however you got here, you found yourself in the optimal place. And just an example, I'm outside and it's 94 degrees. It's not humid, it's hot, but not humid. If you and I were back in Toronto, it was 96 degrees, I'd be dying right now. That would be it. This is just a beautiful place, but it's not like we were born here.
Right.
I have so much appreciation for here. I do about 30,000 steps a day. I wouldn't even take more than like 10 steps to my car because it was so cold in the middle of February. So the appreciation, I remember we were talking about that because you really, during that dinner, when you were sharing with me, you were going to stay in San Diego, you came to a fundamental understanding that this was the place you were going to stop. Because at that point you were thinking about making a big move back to Toronto. You said, where else could I be? My friends in Toronto, they can't leave their homes and we're outside. Yeah, the world is shut down, but I'm outside. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember it well. And it's interesting how that whole sentiment, COVID for me, and I feel guilty saying it, was actually a blessed time because I didn't get on a plane for 14 months. I don't think that since I was 15, that was the case. I got grounded and I started reevaluating in my life. Why does being a competitor, why does it involve bringing noise into your life? Being an entrepreneur and being a competitor, it feels like if there's no noise in your life, you're not being competitive and you're not being an entrepreneur. You know what I mean?
Right. And you're not being productive.
And you're not being productive. And then I looked at my entire balance sheet. And then I looked at all my business relationships and some social relationships. And I literally did this for a whole day, sitting outside during COVID in a beautiful garden. There was no noise in the world. It was all quiet. And I scribed noise, value, and value out of 10. And it's like, wow, I have a lot of high noise, low value ratios. And I slowly got rid of all of those, almost all of them, in fact. And that has given me a tremendous amount of peace. And now I see San Diego not as a place that I'm always going to stay, it's a place that I'm always going to transition through. Because there's a peacefulness here. When we're on the highway, right, and you want to change lanes, people open up a space for you. I just came back from Toronto and Boston and Seattle. People will close a space on you. They won't let you in. There's something about this place, and we're both very blessed with that. Yeah. So I'm glad we are here, both of us.
I fought it. I fought it.
I fought it for 10 years.
I fought it. It was interesting that you shared with me that during this time about the noise, many business relationships that had a purpose at one point, you evaluated and you started disengaging.
Yeah, I did.
And what was that like?
So it's interesting because I was so clear on the reason for doing it. Some of those were sensitive relationships. They were also good friendships. But once I articulated my reason, it wasn't a judgment on them. It wasn't a judgment on the potential of the business. It was all about what I need to do for myself. And thank God, I think to this day, all those relationships are still in place. We see maybe less of each other because we're not in business together. So it was a really good thing. Now, with every action, there's going to be a reaction equal. So now all of a sudden, I have to redeploy capital. And redeploy, because now I've removed from noise, but I need the value, so I had to redeploy. And then I created a list that said, what are the factors in all my journeys? If I look at all the people I've interacted with, I've had so many business, and I continue to have so many business partnerships, thank God. What are the factors that make them successful, and what are the factors that make them volatile? And then I started seeking those people that would bring the success without the volatility. And I was fortunate enough to develop and find access, and I now feel that I've got really good deployment channels, you know. So the other thing, Pete, that I did, it might be off the topic if you don't mind me just sort of mentioning it to you, is during this time, you know, my son's friends would call me up and they'd say, like, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be in business, blah, blah, blah. And I started asking them to define what that means. And I came to this conclusion during that time. And that helped me redeploy my capital and also go to relationships that were less noise. There's a big difference between an entrepreneur, a business person, an analyst, and a consultant. In some cases, you're a little bit of each, but you're always going to have a dominant trend. And what I realize is I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the guy, if you tell me, build a fire here, and everybody told me there's no firewood, it's going to rain, there's no wind, you won't find matches. I'm the guy, I'll make it happen. I just will, always.
Yep.
But then I need a businessman as a partner who says, Mike, great fire. You realize you're about to burn down the entire neighborhood. I'm like, oh, okay, you control the fire.
Right.
And 6 months later, that person calls me up and says, Mike, you know, we're running out of wood. I can't find wood here. No problem. I'll get the wood back in. I'll come with the wood. Hey, you bought too much wood. We've got no storage space. That's an entrepreneur business relationship. The analyst, on the other hand, is a person who analyzes, very often doesn't want to own the decision. So they let other people make the decision of the analysis. And then the consultant is a person who wants to go and tell you what to do. Well thought through, good advice, but doesn't own the outcome. Typically, he's not even there for the outcome.
Right.
So I think during that time, I decided, one, what I am, and who do I want to be, invest alongside or invest in? Which of those different profiles? And I think that helped me a lot. And then talking about change and all that, you know, as you mature, I think that entrepreneurs tend to get more muted as they get older and become a little bit more sanguine, maybe then start developing their business edges.
Yeah.
And business people move on to being more analytical and taking less risk. So I think that's all part of our journey. But I was really glad that I was able to clarify those 4 categories and realize that very, very few people are uniquely strong in 2 of them. They tend to have a dominant one.
Yes. So now let's go and play the 6 cities.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do let's start at the first cities and then move through how old you were, what did you do and what did you take from it? So let's go, because I think this is a good way for our audience to know when I say that you are a serial entrepreneur and you are your wife probably thinks you're a mess maker, right? Because you always cause like new things that happen all the time, right? Like you're creating things all the time, you're creating groups, So let's start off in South Africa. Where in South Africa did you spend your time?
By the way, it's more cities. It's 6 countries, but it's more cities.
Okay, so we'll do cities and countries. I know because you were in Dallas for a while, and I know
Dallas and Miami, and So I grew up in Johannesburg, and which is like the dominant business city of South Africa. Cape Town being the more, it's almost like, I guess in many ways it would be like Los Angeles and San Diego. Cape Town a little bit more chilled, different. Montreal and Toronto, you know, so right. That would be the Johannesburg, Montreal, Cape Town, and it was great. You know, I grew up there. I did my chartered accounting degrees. I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was an officer in the South African Army. We had conscription. I did that, but I was always interested in entrepreneurial and business, always buying and selling and doing things. Then when I left, I went to Australia, actually, because I got my immigration papers really quick for Australia. In those days in the world, there was a big shortage of chartered accountants, CPAs. So pretty much any Commonwealth country, we could get accepted easily. So I went to Australia first, and I landed up in Melbourne. And I quickly realized after living in Melbourne for a short period, that I was just transplanting South Africa with another accent. I was still remote from the real world. I was still in an isolated and tending to be an isolated culture. And that wasn't what I wanted.
Right.
At that time, our papers came through for Toronto. So we went to Toronto. I moved to Toronto and
Toronto, Canada, for those of you who don't know.
Fantastic city. And what happened there was I worked for a small accounting firm. And just, you know, it's not my personality to go and spend time auditing history if I can't take the lessons from the history and try and apply them to the future. So after a period of time, I think we needed to stay there for 4 months, and then we were free to go, let's say. I went and I traveled. By that time, my wife, my girlfriend, joined me from South Africa, and we traveled Thailand, Asia, Europe, and all that type of stuff. Came back and I started working for KPMG in the restructuring financial advisory services, which was the restructuring area. And if you recall, there was sort of 1990 when interest rates spiked to 16% and the world was collapsing. And we got a whole lot of restructuring. I got a whole lot of restructuring experience. Really cool doing receiverships. It's the bank's money and I'm learning the business lessons when I try and restructure. And I caught the attention of oops. I think it's our smoke alarm because of the heat.
Yes.
Yeah. So what happened was I caught the attention of I think I should probably not mention their names, but very prominent Canadian family. They had a business in Dallas. They had a son who was running those, or brother who was, they didn't feel he was achieving appropriately. And they gave me the opportunity to go down there, become a partner in the business. I was leaving KPMG. I had just done a really cool, for various reasons, I acquired a leadership role in the People's Jewelers, which was also Zales.
I remember people, that was Gerstein, right?
Correct. So I got to lead part of that restructure. So I got a little bit of a profile from that. And they gave me this opportunity. My wife and I went down to Dallas. My wife is a physiotherapist.
Yeah.
She got a job. We got green cards in 6 weeks. That's how there was
Wow.
such a dramatic short supply of physiotherapists. And we lived there for 2.5 years. The reason why I left that situation is I came from a family business. My father's business was a small family business. I was now in a very big, powerful family's business. But my blood and their blood were not the same. And as much as they were good people and great businessmen, I wasn't blood. There was never going to be the upside that would come from not being blood. And we had a nice mutual sort of departed from each other. They came pay me for my equity. I had a little bit of capital. But my buddy Adrian, who became my partner when we founded the bank, he came with me to that little accounting firm from South Africa. He's a brilliant operator businessman. So we came together, and then I met also a very dominant financial services family in Toronto. And they told me they had a banking license in Barbados because of the tax treaty. They could defer income or have a much lower tax rate on their income. I'm speaking fast because there are lots of stories. In Barbados, but they had to start a bank. They had to build a third-party arm's length bank. So I went to Adrian. I said, come on, bud, let's do it. And anyway, we convinced ourselves, and therefore them, they were actually able to do it. And fortunately, we did build that, and we got Smith Barney and Frank Russell's partners, and we moved to Barbados. Cara and I, by then we had 2 boys.
Yes.
And actually, our first boy was, when we moved, he was 6 weeks old. We had a first boy, 6 weeks old, and I uprooted my family. I left KPMG when I was about to get an enormous announcement, but that doesn't scare me. Like Liam believed in what we did. So we went to Barbados, and then 1 month Barbados, 1 month Toronto while we built the business. And that went really well. The business, thank God, to this day, it's a large company. It's headquartered mostly in Canada now, and offices are in different parts of the world.
Is this Cidel?
Cidel, yeah, really. Got Canadian banking license, etc. And I was very proud because Adrian and I started that from scratch, sitting on a carpet. We bought out the family after 2 years. And then what happened was I wanted to open the Miami office because we knew South America was a market. So then we would do 1 month Barbados, 1 month Toronto, 3 weeks Miami, and then kept the cycle going. By this time, our family had grown, had 3 sons, and it was a great life. And each place we went to, being an observant Jew, immediately I'd connect with the Jewish community. And because our rule in our families, you contribute before you consume. We'd invite people for meals, we'd get involved in the philanthropy, and we developed wonderful relationships. So now not only did we feel we're living in these communities, including Barbados I'm talking about, we're living in these communities because of business. No, we were living there because we were living there. When we came home to Barbados, when we came home to Toronto, we came home to Miami, we came home, we were with people. We laughed, we were friends, we learned from each other. Then the bank started growing to quite a large size, and I'm not great at maturing slower growing companies. I need to be shaking things up. And I think my shareholders were only too happy when I said I want to go non-executive vice chairman. Of course, a director. I'd sell some of my shares to the new CEO that we did bring in. And that gave us opportunity for me to just be solidified in Toronto while I started building out family office type wealth, let's say. And then my wife and I went to Europe. We went to Gibraltar for her sister's stepson was having a bar mitzvah, actually. And I loved this community. To me, it was like a modern day shtetl, which is like a village in Europe.
How many people lived in that little
30,000, 5 square miles, 30,000 people. Spanish is the spoken language. English is the official language. And I said to my wife, I said, you know, I would love to come spend a year here. Bring our 3 sons. Let's just enjoy Europe. We do like a sabbatical year. We'll rent a house out in Toronto, I'll go to my different partners, tell them I'll still be involved. She said, I'm in. So I went back, I told Cidel, all the different other things that I was involved in, and said, listen, guys, I'm still going to be involved, but I'm going to be doing it from Gibraltar, and we're going for a year. And that was so cool. We rented out our house. We arrived in this like little village. We would travel, everywhere in Europe short. We'd try the different countries. We'd drive, we experienced everything. And we met such cool people. And we really started liking the people. And 5 square miles, you hardly drive. So it's like, let's have another son. We've got an extra 2 hours a day. Let's have another child. And our 4th son was born in Gibraltar. And we really I got involved in business with.
Does he have a British passport?
Sure, yeah. Born in Gibraltar. So at that stage, Gibraltar is it's a very institutional British conservative community, but the expats living there are almost all entrepreneurs.
Right.
So the online gaming industry had exploded in the world at that time upwards. And a lot of them were based in Gibraltar. So I became very close with some of them and started doing some business with them. And we did a mining merchant bank and different businesses there. And then after 4 years of being there, I kind of...
That 1 year turned into 4 years, Mike?
Yeah. Stayed for 4 years. And we had a great time. Great people. To this day, amazing people we're friends with. Nice, interesting business experience. Obviously, business in Europe is completely different to North America. And I had the benefit of that. We dealt with Middle East and Asian investors. But I kind of looked at the situation, and my oldest son, who was 12 at the time, I looked at him and I said, Liam, you've gone so big. When did my little boy get older? The Fiddler song. And he just says, Dad, why have you been on your BlackBerry? And I'm like, that's when I realized, I'm like, if I keep staying in cities where I can be on my A game business-wise, my kids are just going to keep saying the same thing to me. Plus, I was a hard-charging guy. I could have been a nicer husband, nicer father, nicer son, nicer brother, sister to my sisters. So I took a very big decision. I said, I don't want my other sons to say that to me. And we need to move from here because I've become so involved in the community leadership side, philanthropy, business, etc. We wanted to come back to North America where our children could get an expanded education, where they could have a bigger community and get exposed to more kinds of people, etc. So then we started looking at cities and said, where do we go? We can go back to Toronto. That's easy because we have all our relationships. So it'll be like slipping right back into Toronto. We've been away for 4 years, strong relationships all over. Or we can find a city that one has great weather, where the environment and the energy is more powerful than my personality. It's going to cause me to slow down. So if I had to go to New York or Los Angeles or Boston, Chicago, I'd just go right back into being that hard-charging guy. But we also want a community that's small enough where we can really help, where we can help fund initiatives, get involved in leadership initiatives. And San Diego literally was the only city that really fit that bill. We came out here, we met the people, and we have now been here ever since. And
how many years is that, Mike?
14 years almost. It's the longest I've been in any one place. Having said that, we're up and down to Toronto and to other parts, etc. So we see ourselves as loving San Diego as our home base, but evolving because we have these relationships that we want to keep alive. But what comes from all of that, from all these different cities and different relationships, I don't think we're ever fearful about integration, ever.
Right.
We're never fearful about our sons integrating at young ages, all the different schools they've been to. The only thing we're fearful about was not having the courage to say that move was a mistake.
Right.
That not getting caught up and saying, because it was such a big effort to move, we're going to stick it out. We never wanted. That was our biggest fear. Thank God the moves didn't ever create that kind of outcome.
Right.
Now, some would say it's just because we worked hard at making it successful. I don't know if that's true or not, possibly, but yeah.
So every time it's been a growth, and technology has allowed you at the same time to stay connected.
Correct.
The good thing is
Yeah.
when you're starting to work, it's like everyone's like worked out that grouchiness because they're further east.
Exactly right.
You do a lot of mentorship, and that's a huge transition. Is that, and I mean, like, you've always done mentorship, but right now it's less around business and more about giving. And I believe, well, when I was studying for my book, The King of Main Street, I read over 200 books on male aging. You know, I was so interested, and I tell people at first I was reading it because I wanted to know my prey, you know, like successful businessmen, and to know, like, if they didn't know what they needed, they were longing for, I would know so I could lead them there. And I started doing this in my 30s, so I was younger, and something dawned on me. I said the difference between the eater and the eaten is time. And this magical or mythical older man that I'd be Luke Skywalker, and they would give me the lightsaber. Well, eventually I was going to become Ben Kenobi, and I was going to be the old guy, and I'd be
100%.
watching Bambi, and I'd start crying when the mother was killed, because, and I said, I missed this when I was a kid, because how many guys realize when they get older, because now you're a grandfather, like, man, I missed it. And then you're just sitting there and you're like the most littlest thing, you're sitting in amazement.
Yeah.
Say, how did I miss this? This is more beautiful than anything ever.
I know.
And at that point, one of the big lessons I receive, especially when it comes to men who drive, the drive is to everything's external, titles, your marriage, your house, your accomplishments. It's all, you know, building the ego. And then the second half of life, to be healthy, first half of life is about accumulation. It's about cars, it's about finding a spouse, it's about getting like rewards, external rewards, and, you know, having people tell you how great you are, and it's all external. And then a mature person, specifically a man, especially one who's really driven, if they're ever going to find the peace that's inside, they have to realize that it doesn't really matter what they have. They can't take it with them. And it's going to be the people they touched. And that is how they're going to live on.
Absolutely.
And that's a pivotal point that happens in a mature, specifically men or high driving, because I've seen really successful individuals. I knew a gentleman in Toronto, he's worth several $billion, and I got to hang out with him on Fridays, and I realized that he was running the first race of life, and he was miserable.
Mm-hmm.
He was absolutely miserable. It was almost like the story of Mindless Touch, where he touches stuff, but he can't touch it. Like, he touches his daughter, she turns to gold, so he can never hug her.
Yeah, and it's not unusual. It's not unusual.
And I realized that. So share with me your mentorship stories and the things that you're doing right now, because I believe that's the greatest lesson, because like you're super successful, both family, because you woke up to the fact that you're going to screw up your family. Right? No, but that's really the story you told about your 12-year-old son. Yeah. You were smart enough to realize that if you kept on that, your kids were going to be screwed up.
100%.
So at that point, you realized it wasn't you. And you've also said you were like hard driving. Like you joke all the time, your wife is a saint.
She's an amazing person, man. As I told you, you know, after 30 years, the first 10 years, she should have thrown me out. And the next 20, I thanked her for not throwing me out. You know, Pete, it's very interesting because I love mentoring. And the reason for that is one is all of us like a little platform for us to tell our story. And in a way with mentoring, by sharing your wisdom, you're really telling your story.
And hoping that they remember your story to tell someone long after you're dead, right?
Well, that's always what I start off saying. If I'm going to put the effort into mentoring, you got to promise you're going to pass it on. You know, it's like everything else in life, before you invest in a business, before you choose a wife, you have to make sure that you've thought carefully about the person you're about to mentor, whether they're the right person. Because the last thing you want from mentoring someone is frustration. Frustration that you chose the wrong person and they're not reacting to your wisdom that you're passing on. So you got to really spend the time dating with each other to see if you're the right fit. And for me, in order for me to be, I used to say, but I have time in the day because I'm not always busy doing business, whatever it is. The truth of the matter is that's the time that I use to energize myself. So therefore my days are very busy because I'm using that time as well. So what I always try and say to people, I want to mentor you, but you need to have clearly thought through what you want to be mentored on. What are the issues of the day? What are the issues of the year? Whatever they are. Because to come to me with vague conversations, you're going to waste both of our time. You're not going to get the best out of me. So I ask people to put in the effort before we have a call or a meet or whatever it is, to articulate in writing what it is that they'd like to enjoy conversing about. By doing that, one, they often find that they can clarify the issue before they even need to talk to me. Or two, we walk in prepared, listening, and I'm thoughtful. Because that's the only way I can be a good mentor. Me listening, being hyper-focused and in the moment and thoughtful, I could take from this little compendium, a database of knowledge and wisdom, and direct the appropriate thoughts to this person. Because they got to walk away and say, I just gave up an hour or two of my time and that was worthy. And in addition, I want to dwell on the thoughts that came from Mike. And what I find now is, so obviously in business, I do that. I'm a director of different boards, whatever it is. And I always choose people that are the future of the company to say, can I be the person that mentors you? Because I want to help you get your dreams. I want to cherish and relish in your dreams. And also I'm an investor. So that's even cool on that side. People who really wake up in the morning without bringing their ego and agenda to the work, but to help people, they're exhausted. They're so busy all day long doing for others and helping other people's problems. No one ever sits down with them and says, how can I be there for you?
Right.
It can be a rabbinical leader, it can be a homeless or whatever it is. I'm good at that. Because one, I'm enormously thankful for what they do. So I walk in there just humbled by what they do. And I can energize and empower them because I'm so proud of it. And I'm doing that more and more. But in that also comes the business wisdom, because a lot of them are sometimes too generous. So tactically, it's smart. Strategically, they're always running out of money and they're always going back to donors with the same story. So I help in that type of stuff. And I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the not just going out. The best way to thank these people is being there for them because no one else is. Everybody's taking from them. No one else is sitting there. And the other thing is, of course, your family, right? I've got my sons are 4 sons, older, unmarried, all developing their careers. You want to be there for them and you want to mentor them. You want to keep involved. You want to be thoughtful in your involvement. So I find, my days are pretty full with interacting with people. And in most cases, the reason for the interaction is to add mentorship. If it's not to do a business transaction or an investment transaction, then it's a different motivation. But if it's a human transaction, there's an element of mentoring associated with it.
Yeah. Growth. Every relationship should be based on growing as a person. Correct. So I'm going, before we wrap up, you had an interview with a gentleman who worked for a very, very, very successful company. Not going to bring it up, but it's a company that everybody knows. So, and he was very much into servant leadership.
Right.
And I thought about the things that you spoke about with him, and I agree with you. Because the mantra of servant leadership is just to serve the other person and to forget yourself. And I just want to recount, you had that discussion, but at that point you had to, because here was someone most people would never say what they said to him, because he ran a company, and when he left, when he left, it was 22,000 franchises around it. Yeah. And you shared your point. So can you relive that conversation you had?
Well, I challenged him. I challenged him because I'm a big believer that no matter how old or how young you are, the only thing that is free is error. Whatever you receive, you should have done something for. Sometimes you receive much more than the effort you put in, sometimes the other way around. A quick example, not getting to politics, is $20,000 student loan write-off. I was against it and someone challenged me, oh, you this, you that. I said, no, you didn't ask me what I would have preferred. What I would have preferred is you can get a $20,000 write-off, but you give 40 hours of community service over the next year. So you take that, you give that.
Right.
It's for free. And when I discussed this concept with the servant leadership concept, I felt that a lot of it was, I wake up in the morning to be there for you, to serve you, and in that I lead. But I kept challenging him, what did you expect to be the reciprocal receipt from those people?
Right.
And that his point was, if you hire well, they know what to do. I'm not sure that, I often find that very good people don't do good things only because no one helped tell them what they want to see from them.
Right.
I've often, and if you say to him, you should really, my dad passed away 6 months ago, and there were 2 or 3 people that I was a bit disappointed that they didn't spend the time with me when I needed them. But I realized afterwards, their parents were both alive. They didn't know what to do. If I would have gone to them and said, hey, bud, could you blah, 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 they would have been there in a second.
Right.
People don't know what to do sometimes. And if you're a servant leadership without any expectation, assuming people figure out for themselves, sometimes they just don't know what to do. But if you're a leader that says, this is my role, this is what I will do for you, but this is what you're going to do for me. And by the way, I will lead by example in that. I think that you get the best out of people and they get the best out of you. And I think that was the difference.
Because mentorship is like, I give, but don't expect anything other than my wisdom. With patronship, I'm giving you air cover. But you also have a responsibility to me. You represent me. People know that you're with me, but you have responsibility. So when I'm not there, you're also representing me in the best light. And if they don't see that, then you're right. If you have a spoiled child, you've never punished them, how do they know how to behave well when they go out? And you're not doing them a service either. And that was one thing that it almost was like, sounds like communism. I'm going to call it, because this day and age, it's like, let's go, like, forget about your achievements. Just going to go and give it to you because you're now the flavor of the week, right? And I'll share with you, I don't know, do you know Kim Moody?
No, I don't.
Kim Moody, after you were in STEP,
yeah.
He became the head of STEP, and he was the head of the Canadian Tax Foundation.
Yes, I do know him.
And I interviewed him. I'll send you the interview. He was, I like him because he stepped up. And you'd be like, it's someone you would want to be friends with. And the reason you want to be friends with, and I'll give you a story, because I went to him in my interview. I said, Kim, you're the reason I'm in San Diego. Because for years, my wife wanted me to move back to San Diego, and I was comfortable in Toronto. And what happened is my phone starts going crazy. It's on July 18th, and we're looking at homes, and I'm saying, yeah, we'll look, right? But, we're going to go back to Toronto. My life is comfortable. World's easy. And I get this thing from all the main tax accountants and all their firms that the Trudeau government is going to completely rewrite the Income Tax Act in 70 days and penalize all the entrepreneurs in the country for being entrepreneurial. And the same logic, servant leadership. Oh, you should just do this because you're helping the community. Forget about you doing this because you're helping your family and yourself. And he decided to, out of his own dime, to go traveling across Canada to educate accountants and business people what the legislation meant. And he ended up getting the King Eddie. So in early August, I'm at the King Eddie. There could have been 400 people in this room. He paid for it. He's a leader in the tax world. Do you know how many people showed up in Toronto? 30. Out west where they admire entrepreneurship, he was getting 500-600 people. And in Toronto and Montreal, they weren't showing. And I said, this country's going to burn down. Like literally at that point, before COVID, before the tyrannical real rule of Trudeau, this was like the first shot at the only people in the country who are independent. Because let's face it, the reason I'm an entrepreneur, Mike, because I want to keep people out of my life. I only want the people in my life that I want in my life. And basically everyone I am attracted to, the same thing. We want like the government and all these other things that we don't want to deal with. They're like, we're trying to control a cold sore.
We want the freedom we want the freedom to make our own mistakes.
Right. And at the same time, and I want to be, if I want to play with you, I play with you. I don't have someone else telling me whether to play or not. And at that point, it was like, oh my God, all these people. And then we had the conversation, and this is a big insight for me. And I'd love you to watch the interview because he pointed out things that he discovered. He was trying to, he understood the difference between East and West. And I was trying to explain all these accountants and lawyers and whatever, they work at these large firms. They're employees. Yeah. You're an entrepreneur. You started your own firm and whatever, and yeah, they're technically advanced just like you, but they're not you, and they don't have that. And it was a realization. And getting back to the servant leadership, the country that I loved really has embraced that toxic belief. And that's why I brought it up to you, because in essence, I went out and I created a business, and that created jobs. And I took the risk, and my family could be living in a garage, or I could be living in a mansion. But in essence, no one's going to pick me up. And an employee, a lot of people, they trade security for freedom.
Yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of people, I guess everybody's got to do what they will most, be in the environment they can most excel in. But this concept of sending the wrong message, followers want to be led, leaders want to lead. Some followers want to evolve into leaders. And the best way that's going to happen is by being around a proper leader, that you can have that evolution. Anyway, Peter, it's all, listen, the good thing is each day we interact with more people, we're curious about more people, and we get better. You know, it's funny, when I was in my 20s, I dated a woman for a short period of time, about 10 years older than me. And she's saying, Mike, here's the story. I got the experience and you got the energy. That's why we're a good team. And that's what our mentoring is, right? We now got the experience, and we want to hang out with younger people who've got the energy, so we can feed off their energy.
Yeah, you say, hey, don't go there. Like it's not going to work out. But over there, you'll save yourself like a lot of pain. Yeah. Sometimes you got to let them, but sometimes you got to let them go there. Yeah. I'd like to close off on this before I ask you for your last thought. One of the greatest lines I ever heard, and this guy actually told me about someone, I had to steal it and put it in my book. He said that he was working for a big search firm, and the guy who ran it says, I'm going to make you get 6-7 figures. But guess what? I'm going to let you go out there for the first few months and just fall on your face, because you're not going to listen to me right now. Whatever I tell you to do, you're not going to listen. Absolutely. So you're going to go out there. You're going to become the biggest loser in town. Your ego is going to be completely be beaten down. And then you'll come to me, and then we can start.
100%. Look, and that's what we do. That's what my dad did with me, and that's what we do with our kids. Always be around to catch the ball, but let them first go through the experience. Yeah.
Well, Mike, you've been awesome.
Always a pleasure. Yeah.
So give me a last thought to someone who's listening to this, young people, seasoned entrepreneurs, people going through change right now over the last 2 years. Give us a nugget from all your
That's
experiences. I'm putting you right on the spot, but I know, Mike, you write things down. Do you have something?
Here's my nugget. Take a pen and paper, assuming you're in business or in philanthropy, because philanthropy or not-for-profits are business, so they're known. Write down, are you a business person, an entrepreneur, an analyst, or a consultant? Once you've written that down, determine then which is your dominant area and seek out people. Don't say, I want to be in venture capital or in private equity. Those are just departments.
Yeah.
Those aren't skills. Find people. Always go, you never know, the person who's sitting next to you in a coffee shop, the person who comes to your church or your house, whatever it is. Seek out people, say, this is who I am. I've decided. Tell me about what those thoughts bring up in your mind. What did you do? Tell me, let me learn from you. Spend that due diligence. And once you have all that succinctly understood, coalesce it and then choose one or two mentors.
You have to earn their mentorship.
Earn their mentorship, and the way you earn their mentorship is by being prepared, by never being late for them. I had our sixth principle in our family, Pete: honor, respect, and cherish other people's time. The way honor, respect, and cherish other people's time, the way you would like them to honor, respect, and cherish your time. Be prepared, be on time, and be respectful. That's how you treat your mentor.
The golden rule.
Golden rule.
The golden. Michael, thank you. I really think this is fantastic.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom, and your insights.
Thank you for giving me the platform to do that.